So welcome everyone to our panel on automating privacy compliance with LLMs. My name is Engin Bozdag. I lead privacy and security architecture at Uber. So we all know privacy engineering is hitting a tipping point. Teams are overstretched, regulations are evolving, and our systems are getting more complex. So large language models such as DeepSeek, they're being hailed sometimes as the next big thing, maybe the magic bullet that will automate the privacy compliance for us. But is it really true, or are we just adding another layer of complexity without actually solving the underlying issues? So we'll dive into successes, pitfalls, and experiences around using LLMs in privacy engineering. I have a great panel here. We're very fortunate to have three experts: a B2C social media company, someone from a B2B enterprise with handling a lot of data, and a very innovative vendor experimenting with LLMs. So let's see how they approached LLMs. I'll let them introduce themselves. Let's start with EOS. EOS, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Engin. Thank you. My name is EOS. I'm engineering manager at Snap for the Privacy by Design team. I've been with the team for like a little bit over 5 years. Prior to that, I was at Duke, working on differential privacy. So I'm very happy to hear, and I have to say that the opinions I will share with everyone are my own, and they do not express the ones of my employer. Yeah.
Thank you for the introduction. Stefano, you want to go next?
Yes, thank you. I'm Stefano. I'm a privacy architect at Here Technologies. Here is a business-to-business company that builds maps and offers services on location data for use cases like logistics, electric vehicles, autonomous driving, and many others. Also, I would say that today I'm not speak on behalf of Here. I will offer my personal opinions only. At Here, I'm part of the privacy and responsible AI team, working on technical aspects mostly. In particular, I've been experimenting with using LLMs to automate different kinds of compliant tasks. And one of these experiments that I'm going to talk about today is about using LLMs as assistants to help with technical privacy reviews, where we work with teams and ensure products architectures embed privacy best practices.
Thank you, Stefano. And finally, we have Ugur from Privado.
Hey everyone, so excited to be here. So my background is a blend of program analysis, privacy, and AI. I spent about 8 years in grad school working on AI-powered code scanning tools. And after that, I jumped into the world of privacy at Amazon, where I spent about 4 years for building automated privacy auditors for Alexa AI models. And now I'm at Privado, leading the AI research and development projects. And at Privado, I get a unique opportunity to leverage my academic research and industry experience. And putting it simply, at Privado, LLMs augment the privacy code scanning engine to guide the search space to achieve higher accuracy and to improve the quality of the results as we aim at finding answers to critical questions like what personal data is being collected by my software, where is this personal data being stored, with whom this personal data being shared, and does any of this personal data processing activity violate my company policies or any global regulations?
All right, thank you. So let's start exploring real-world applications. I'm interested, our panelists, their experiences in using LLMs in privacy engineering. Where do they thrive, or in your opinion, have the potential, and where do they fall short? Let's start with EOS. EOS, I know taking a look as a first pass review tool or summarization, mainly on privacy reviews. Tell us about your experiences, please.
Yeah, like I'm thinking like the LLM, like the space of privacy by design team, for example, right? You have like this privacy review game where on the one hand you have your customers, which is like PMs, engineers, right? They're trying to create a product, and there's a privacy team, lawyers, privacy engineers, and so on that we're all trying to do what's best for the organization, right? Like create like a safe experience for the users and create products, right? So in cases like the way I see LLMs, in places where the organization, the engineers, right, the customers, the privacy customers, they don't really understand this privacy game, they could come up with you and create a spec for you that you review that it's like, doesn't have the details. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth figuring out the privacy details so you can proceed with your privacy analysis, right? And especially for more junior people, or like they could submit like a 25-page engineering design document, and how do you review that, right? So that is one space, right? Like, hey, can you use this amazing technology that assists privacy customers in how they can improve their own experience, right? Like as a completion tool, right? As a, oh, these are the things that the privacy reviewer would be looking for, right? So that is one. And second, Engin, like the very first thing that you said, introduced in the panel, is like, how do you scale this business, right? If you have like hundreds of reviews per month, right, to conduct, and how do you deal with the low complexity ones? Do you have like a lawyer and a privacy engineer looking at every little logging request? Or do you have like a triage tool that could be powered from LLM, right? So these are like the two, high level ideas where I can see these technologies really helping our space.
And where have you seen limitations where you think, summarization, whether helping with triaging things, that they're not there yet?
So I don't know, so here's the thing, right? Speaking of limitations, it's like if you're gonna use it as a completion tool, right? Is it really helping the customer, right? Is it improving their experience? And this is something that you would have to test. You would have to interview your customers to see like, is it really helping them, or are they just annoyed and they just want to speak to a person, right? That is one. And on the other side, a limitation, triaging, what are you overlooking, right? What are the potential privacy risks that this machine could expose you to? And it could be okay, it could be like privacy risk that the organization as a whole is comfortable making, right? So for these two applications, these are like the two things that we have to be a little bit more careful with.
Stefano, I know you also worked on using LLMs in privacy reviews. You run experiments with classification and summarization. Can you give us a highlight of what was very promising, what worked well, and what still needs further work?
Yeah. As you said, we were also trying to see how to use these LLMs to scale up our privacy reviews. So we tested a couple of things. We tested the LLMs as classifiers to identify which projects include privacy risks and are in need of in-depth review. We measure different metrics. The most relevant are the false negatives. False negatives are projects that contain a privacy risk that the LLM does not detect. So these missing detections are problematic because they can lead to products that contain privacy risks. We also measured false positives, which are privacy risks that the model identifies but are not existing or not relevant. This is less of a problem as it does not add privacy risk to the organization, but it creates additional work for the human reviewer. So during this test, we found that LLMs fall short in terms of false negatives. The good news is that the number of false negatives is quite low and it's comparable to that of a junior human reviewer. What we typically do with junior reviewers is we team them up with experts, and having more SMEs review the same document ensures that all issues are identified. It would be interesting to test if having different LLMs reach consensus would also similarly reduce the number of false negatives. We also tried LLMs as summarization tools, where the model is tasked to summarize the document and highlight privacy risks. We found that the LLMs reduces the workload of a human reviewer by around 85% when measured as the number of words to be reviewed. There is still a high false positive ratio, but probably improvements in LLM reasonings could reduce that further. When we were looking into these false positives, we noticed a couple of things. LLMs tend to highlight unlikely risks because they misinterpret information. For example, they may highlight a risk that users can provide personal data as input to a product, when in fact this product is not exposed to end users. This is typically caused by insufficient documentations. We all know that teams are short on time, they tend to be concise and omit well-known information. But the same information may not be well known to the LLM. And if information is ambiguous or incomplete, LLMs tend to make assumptions based on their training, and that means they hallucinate or produce errors. So I think documentation quality is the main challenge with any review, whether it's done by a human or by an AI. And to address this, we built a knowledge base that contains the most used acronyms, description of data sources, description of products, and so on. Another cause of false positive were visuals. Architects prefer visualizations and graphs to explain flows and complex concepts, and so it's crucial to provide this information to the LLM. We tested multimodal LLMs, but at the time of testing, they were not accurate at understanding the visuals. We tried creating textual descriptions from the diagram sources, but we found it difficult to support all various formats and syntax that are out there.
So if I understand you correctly, that document quality has a big effect on the outcome, that LLMs try to make a judgment, even though the information is lacking, which might lead to a lot of false positives. False negative rates, meaning LLMs missing risk, is lower comparable to a junior expert, and visuals is a difficult problem. Okay, this is very interesting. But stepping out from the review side, let's hear from Ugur on other use cases. I know, Ugur, you've been working on code scanning, using LLMs, interpreting results, also work with scanning DPAs. So can you tell us more about that?
Of course, yeah, sure. So yeah, we do have maybe some kind of unique use cases at Privado. We do work with the source code, and sometimes we do work with the network traffic data as well. To our experience, LLMs, Gen AI in general, works the best when it's complementary to the main approach. And the main approach in this case is the code scanning approach. This code scanning engine creates a reliable representation of the software, which is a graph, and then AI comes in to find which parts of this graph are interesting, right? So which part of this graph is collecting the personal data, and where is the storage events happening in the graph, and what are the paths from the collection points to the third-party sharing nodes. So in all of these tasks, LLMs are very effective with very high accuracy results indeed. So this helps us to improve the coverage. But in addition to this, we do get some results directly from code scanning engine. For example, the data flows that go into the third parties or to the log files. We can have false positives in those coming from code scanning because of some approximations being made in the code scanning algorithm. However, AI is very effective in telling, hey, there is a incorrect overflow happening here. Because of that, you are showing a data flow which actually is not true. And AI is helping us to achieve about 95% accuracy with our data flow results there. The shortcomings are mostly about costs and data sharing concerns. So yes, we do work with customers' data, and it's often the case the customers don't want to share their source code with us. In those cases, we have to deploy all of our engines to their on-premise environment, and that actually limits how big we can go. So we have to do all of this with a relatively small model that can be deployed on a single GPU machine, and ideally not with a lot of cost, right? So we want to keep the cost minimum to maximum 10,000 a year with a single GPU machine, and being able to achieve very good results with fine-tuned models that are like tailored for specific use cases. And maybe another challenge is customizability. We sometimes see, for example, customers' personal data that a customer thinks is very critical is not that critical for another customer, or a customizability in terms of regulations as well. A US governed company might have different policies, different priorities compared to a company that operates in the EU. And AI becomes challenging to generalize in those cases, and DPO is an example of that. Data processing addendum there's a template provided by the GDPR regulators. However, that template is rarely followed, and that makes extracting the important information from that document is very challenging. And even when you achieve the good results, like you extract all the information, some companies say, for example, okay, this is not very interesting for us. What we want to do is actually, can you tell me the security measures that are mentioned in the document? So, or the hosting locations mentioned in the document, and the document has no mention of that. So these are the challenges when it comes to applying LLMs in these contexts.
So if I hear correctly, lots of promising work to support human assessment, especially in code scanning piece, but it's essentially a dilemma that, if you want to do on-prem, with more privacy, you would need investment in the hardware versus you could utilize something at a vendor, but then you have to think privacy and security.
Security, confidentiality, maybe more, because this is the company's source code for some probably intellectual property, right? IP data. It could be considered that way. So yes, we definitely do not share, for example, any customer data with third party. All the AI models that we develop are internal. They stay in our cloud. But again, for some customers, even this is not okay. They don't want to share any data even with us. That restricts how big we can go. We have to deploy. Everything has to be deployable to their on-premise, basically.
Very interesting. So I think we discussed, code scans, DPA scanning, privacy reviews, summarization, lots of different use cases. I want to talk about some practical considerations for adoption. So many companies have minimal privacy engineering teams, if any. Should they even be considering LLMs at this stage? And if they do, what points should they really prioritize? Let's start with Stefano. Stefano, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that most privacy teams I know are stretched thin and have little time for innovation. And in this case, I think that teaming up with other teams is a good idea. For example, there may be teams in your organization that are experimenting with LLMs for other purposes. For example, a compliance team that is building a FAQ chatbot, or a development team that is working on automatic documentation, or a security team building some automated security testing, and so on. These teams have already completed the groundwork to justify investment in building AI tools for their use cases, and they have also gained support of their leadership. And this experience can help you as well demonstrate value for your own use case and with your own leadership. And also from a technical point of view, reusing and combining parts of these systems can speed up building and testing a privacy-focused LLM, especially if your team lacks the required technical skills. There is one critical asset that is full responsibility of the privacy team, though, which is building a dataset for testing. For example, a collection of old past privacy decisions. This can be time-consuming as it may require additional manual labeling.
So essentially, kind of look into your organization, who is doing what, reuse forces, join forces, and also get the support of leadership. Interesting. EOS, what do you think?
The last part about the support of leadership, I think, is like a critical thing. Like any application of any technology, really needs to be context dependent, right? So what is the appetite for risk and so on and so forth, right? For example, Stefan earlier said that, oh, this is as good as a junior privacy analyst, right? Okay, great. So in certain contexts, this might be like an appropriate thing to do. For example, in a privacy review. In some other context, maybe the regulator is already investigating a particular product, and maybe you don't want to make a claim. We have our brightest junior analysts on it, right? So it is very context dependent. So that is the first pillar, I think, as a practical consideration. The second, and I think Ugur touched on it a little bit earlier about confidentiality, is like, how do you deploy this thing, right? Are you gonna do it in-house, right? Where you need to build the infra, or maybe you have the infra, but then you have to agree on the ROI, right? Or are you gonna use a vendor? And then what is the business agreement with the vendor? Because you're sending them, in this case, for example, the privacy review game, you don't send them your code, but you do send them your design documents, your past privacy decisions, and so on and so forth, right? What is the appropriate choice here? Again, this is a decision that engineering leadership and organizational leadership has to make, right? And the last thing I have in my mind about how we think about changing the status quo to enable scaling is like, when we measure success for an automation tool, for an LLM in this case, what do you measure exactly? Because if you say I'm going to measure time to complete a review, right? Of course, it's going to be a success, right? But is that what you should be measuring? Should we celebrate that, or should we be mindful of, hey, what is a false positive rate? What is a false negative rate, which is more important? Because I think, Ugur, you touch on it, like, we shouldn't have, like, say, like, this is a machine and I can build this out of the window. the machine should be complementary to the main practice and to the mission of what we're trying to accomplish, right? So I think like these three things would be like as we adopt the technology, these three things should be in our mind as like, hey, in practice, we're gonna have to make decisions in these questions.
So you have to think about the privacy risk. You have to think about your metrics. What are you actually measuring? And also, automation shouldn't be a substitute for accountability. All great points. And I think, as a vendor serving the industry, different players, you must hear, sometimes AI just doesn't work for us. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think that is probably a misconception. I would say. But before coming to that, I want to touch upon the size of the team again. I'm inclined to say, smaller the privacy team, the stronger the reason to use AI to achieve privacy governance. But this decision also should align with the company's general AI approach. If, for example, the engineers are able to use Copilot for development, and the AI team doesn't use the privacy team doesn't use AI for governance, that's a losing game. You will never catch up with what engineers are producing. The products will evolve in 10x, and you will try to govern them with your current practices. And coming to the AI pitfalls, when I survey my non-technical friends working in the privacy field, what I usually hear is, "Oh, it didn't work. It doesn't do the job." But I think the misconception is we are expecting the AI to do our job. It's not going to work. AI will not take AI will not do our jobs for us. Instead, we should be using AI to become more productive in the privacy field, right? So we should be using AI with the right context to solve the problems that we know we can solve ourselves. So if you don't know how to solve the problem, or we don't provide the sufficient context to the AI to solve the problem, then yeah, we are going to get crappy results. But when integrated into the existing systems with the right context to solve a very well-defined problem with sufficient examples, AI will do a very good job. I'm pretty confident on that.
So let's try to think about the future. I mean, or you said, this is a good tool to support, and you don't want to fall behind, especially all of your engineers are utilizing it. But let's look into the future. 5 years from now on, nobody can predict the future, but we can always have guesses. Is it realistic to think that in 5 years, most of the privacy reviews will be automated using LLMs, or do you think we will still be debating the same trade-offs and limitations that we are discussing today? So EOS, you want to start?
Yeah, like I'm not a gambling person, but if I have to bet, like automation is the way forward, like 100%, there's no question in my mind, right? We've seen this in computer science time and time again, whether it's writing machine code, to writing assembly, to writing high-level code, and so on and so forth, right? And I can't see a world where the most repetitive tasks are conducted by the most brilliant minds, right? And there was a question on chat about it. We should leverage these machines to create deep cycles for us, so that we're able to tackle the most gnarly things, right? Whether it's a lawyer drafting the company policy for like a new regulation, or is it us creating like differential privacy or this or that. And I think that's a future. You can't have humans, reviewing every single UI change and every single logging addition to the logging systems, right? Some things will, privacy will, evolve, and some things need to be automated. That's my take.
That's your take, yeah. So a large percent will probably automate it, but there will still be need for human assessment. Or what do you think? You already touched upon it a bit, that privacy problem will be bigger, so we need automation. But what do you think?
Yeah, again, to maybe to repeat a little, it's a losing game if you are not using AI to solve the privacy problems. The engineers are using it, and it's gonna it will never go down from here. It will always escalate. It will always be more data collected, more AI in our lives. For example, in the health sphere, there will be, I mean, again, this is a little bit maybe future telling. There will be a trade-off between AI and between health and privacy, for example. So there will be all these, I mean, this is already happening, but it will only grow bigger. These wearable health devices will collect all the personal data from our bodies, from our day-to-day lives, and all that personal data needs to be governed. And again, with the scale of AI, this is going to be a huge privacy problem if we are not using automated tools to prevent privacy incidents and govern in the, like, starting at the design and then continuous like steps of prevention tools. We are not going to cope with the scale there. Yes. So to maybe wrap it up, I would say AI, with AI, the scale is growing very fast, and the best tool to address that is, again, using AI to mitigate.
That's very interesting. So we will need AI to tackle some of the AI issues. Stefano, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with EOS and Ugur. Great points raised. I also think that automation is needed for what they just said. But I also think that human oversight on privacy reviews will be required for a long time, even if the whole review itself gets automated by AI, because oversight is a key principle of responsible AI. And I see that in future, expect responsible AI discussion to become more and more central to product development and driving AI products to specialize in narrow functionalities. Why specialized AI models that require less data to work will, first of all, raise less privacy concerns. We'll have lower network costs of transferring data. You can think about some proposals of sending over the internet one screenshot every second. And also, they will have lower compute costs and may allow even running models locally, so saving even more on compute costs.
So we're approaching the end of our panel. I'm checking if there are any questions, but otherwise, any closing remarks on the future of AI and privacy engineering? Ugur, you want to start?
Yeah. So I mentioned the like multi-layered approach to privacy governance, right? Again, it's privacy by design. That's the design phase, and at the implementation, I think Privado provides a very nice solution by code scanning. And then when you deploy these solutions, you still need monitoring there, right? Even pushing in the middle phase when you are implementing, one thing, for example, we are thinking at Privado is currently we are scanning the code in the repository. Shifting this further to the left would be, for example, if your company has a privacy assistant, pretty much like Copilot, baked into the development environment of your engineers, they can immediately warn the engineer about some violation if they are, for example, writing a function that shares data with social media company that is not sanctioned with the company policy. So yeah, there is a lot of excitement in the company, I would say, using AI for solving privacy problems.
Thank you. EOS, your closing thoughts.
Like the some of the words, right? Like that were like responsibility, like oversight, scale. Like we should consider all these things as we deploy these technologies, right? Be mindful what we're doing, and yeah, like generally, I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. And we need the machines, right? There's not enough PhD students coming out of universities to help us. So we need the machines to help us here somehow. Yeah.
Thank you. Stefano.
Yeah, I think AI has great potential to facilitate the work of privacy engineers and not only privacy engineers, and in turn to make products more private. We just have to understand how to best use AI for it.
All right. Thank you.